Dr. Daniel Griffin.
And I'm Dixon DePommier.
And today we're going to be discussing eye complaints.
Right. How about we complaints?
We complaints.
Sorry.
Took me a second, but I think I got that.
I couldn't resist.
This is a pretty broad topic.
I'll say.
I know when we were doing the lecture on musculoskeletal, it was a big sigh because there are so many issues that fall under this umbrella.
Sure.
And a similar dynamic of some of them are going to be relatively benign, easy to treat. Some of them are going to be serious. And I sort of say as a primary thing is the prevention of blindness and visual impairment are priorities in all settings.
I'll say.
If someone is at risk of losing their vision, that can be devastating and catastrophic. So we're going to talk about a lot of different reasons why someone might come to see us with eye complaints.
So when you mention that, if you don't mind me usurping a little bit.
Usurp away.
Okay. So I've got just two diseases that I think of when I think of infectious diseases of the eye that could lead to blindness. And one of them used to be the leading cause of blindness in the world, which is a disease caused by a worm. And the name of that worm is Onchocerca volvulus. But it's no longer the leading cause of blindness in the world. And there's a vitamin deficiency that's also a leading cause of blindness. But there's another infection called trachoma, which is caused by a chlamydial organism, as I recall.
You know, I like that you bring these up because I'll call them the big three.
The big three.
The big three. Now, I'll say that certain non-infectious causes, like cataracts, are a major cause of blindness throughout the world.
Of course.
But chlamydia, trachomatis infection of the eye can lead to scarring and blindness, and is a target for many mass drug campaigns. Onchocerca volvulus, or river blindness, was at one point a incredibly major,
that's right,
perhaps number one cause of blindness in many parts, if not the entire world. And vitamin A deficiency is actually, some would say, the number one cause of blindness in the world. So you have a mix. You have from bacterial infections, parasitic infections, vitamin deficiencies, and I throw cataracts in there as a non-infectious cause of blindness. So you get to deal with all the different types of processes when you start looking at risks to an individual's vision.
Wow. And then you have trauma, of course, too, but that's...
you definitely have trauma.
Most of the time, obvious.
You definitely have trauma.
Is, right?
And a lot of these different, we'll say, risks for a person's vision are geographically dependent.
Exactly.
In some parts of the world where the vitamin deficiencies and infection have been addressed, then actually cataracts and trauma become much more major. A lot of these are addressed not by the individual clinician, but as I think you're starting to allude, mass drug campaigns and public health efforts.
Exactly.
So river blindness, you mentioned, is no longer such a big concern. Why is that?
No. How much time do we have?
in brief,
the miracle of the silver bullet therapy for various diseases, and we use that term, but it relates back to the treatment for syphilis. There is a magic bullet now for onchocerciasis, and it's called ivermectin. And it was discovered by accident, but the method was not by accident. It was a method that they employed to randomly search the surface of the earth for a microbial species that would produce a substance which could then interfere with the biology of something completely different. You'd call that an antibiotic, and that's how the first ones were discovered also. And this one was discovered next to a Japanese golf course by an employee of the Merck therapeutic pharmaceutical company. And that organism was, as a soil sample, sent back to Rahway, New Jersey.
Yes.
It was cultured by a good friend of mine. His name is William Campbell. And part of that fermentation reaction that was produced by the organisms in that random soil sample happened to contain the one ingredient that, when isolated and used against worms and other things too, would interfere with their biology. And to make a very long story brief as possible, my friend was a recipient of the Nobel Prize in 2015 as the result of his good work and perseverance with regards to making sure that this drug was applied to Africa and to Central and South America, where this disease is found. And unfortunately, I think, the person who also helped champion this, Jimmy Carter, our former president of the United States, was also instrumental in getting this drug not only approved, but also used. But unfortunately, they can only give it to 3 people when they give a Nobel Prize, and so he has my Nobel Prize. I'm sorry, I didn't want to do that.
That's okay.
I'll repeat. So Bill Campbell has a Nobel Prize, and Jimmy Carter has my Nobel Prize, which I would give to him and say thank you so much for your efforts in making.
No, he's done I think they've all done a tremendous amount. So that's excellent. And in certain parts of the world,
yep.
Where people may go to work,
yes,
there still may be river blindness endemic. We've restricted that, so that'll be on your list of something that will be special. If you're in an area where river blindness is still endemic, you may encounter this. It's a very chronic process. But let's sort of give ourselves a list, because what I feel like we're trying to do, and this is a challenge, is we're taking a whole medical subspecialty and we're packaging it in one common. Right. Yes, we take all of ophthalmology.
20 minutes.
We're packaging it in 20 minutes. So that's quite. So what are the common things that clinicians are going to see that they will address, and then there's going to be a much broader thing where they're probably going to need to get someone with a little more knowledge. So let's talk about non-infectious. We'll start in a sense in my background. So we'll start about cataracts.
Yep.
Cataracts are incredibly common.
Yes.
They're opacifications in the lens that interfere with vision. They actually can be quite a problem for someone who's trying to work, who's one of the main individuals providing for the family unit.
Of course.
And in a lot of areas, you can do prevention, but once it develops, it's going to be a surgical intervention.
Yeah.
So it's going to be one of those areas where you need to know your referral networks, and you may think, oh my gosh, surgery, this is beyond the scope, but in a lot of parts of the world, they realize that an individual who can't work is much more expensive.
Absolutely.
And there actually will be access to surgical options.
Yeah.
So this is another area where technology is going to come to our aid. So we'll talk a little bit about cataracts. Cataracts, the complaint might be interference with their vision.
Right.
And then using an otoscope, and actually often just with the naked eye, you're shining it and you'll see the cataract in the lens. It's basically this white, and once you've seen a few cataracts, it'll then become easier to pick up the more subtle ones. And prevention, sunglasses, things that will prevent the UV exposure.
So there's a universal cause to the cataract.
You're
implying that at least.
Actually, UV tends to be a major risk factor, there are other triggers, other drivers as well, but that's a big one.
Right.
But then surgery is where we're going to go, so we're sort of combining diagnosis right to treatment here.
Right.
The next thing that a lot of clinicians may see for the first time when they go to tropical areas maybe up in the mountains, areas where there's a lot of sun and dust exposure, is something called pterygium. Familiar with pterygium? I should probably spell pterygium.
It's a PTYG something.
So it is PTERYGIUM, so pterygium. And this is something I had not encountered practicing in the United States until I started practicing overseas. I'd seen really mild, I'll say insignificant variants, but when I started going to areas where there was lots of sun, lots of dust, an inability for people to protect their eyes, you actually develop this pterygium, which is a triangular growth that extends out from the medial aspect of the nasal conjunctiva. And it can extend far enough out that it actually interferes with vision.
Really?
And so how do you think we prevent this?
A mask.
Well, it's actually direct UV and dust exposure to the eye, so sunglasses.
Oh, yeah,
again.
Sure, of course.
So again, we can protect it. Sometimes, again, if it actually gets to the point, again, it's going to require mechanical or surgical interventions.
Wow.
Now we'll get into some of our infectious.
Wait a minute, is that age dependent?
It's something that develops over time. So we're going to see it as people are more UV, more dust. But unfortunately, from a sort of impact on the family unit, it can become a problem during the time in life when maybe you're responsible for working, providing for the family. So again, this can be devastating to a community and a family when it moves out. It can also be devastating to an individual at any age when you're starting to lose vision, because it is such an important part of experiencing the world.
Right.
Let's move into infections.
Okay.
What are the most common? Have you ever had a time where your eye was bothering you? Maybe it was pink or something?
Yes, I've had, I guess, a fungal infection. It was a pink eye.
So it's not fungal.
It's not fungal. Sorry, back off.
No, that's okay.
Try that again.
No, that's okay. But pink eye is the common name for viral conjunctivitis.
Viral. Okay.
Viral. But sometimes you can have purulent conjunctivitis. And so conjunctivitis is the inflammation of the conjunctiva.
Okay.
It's basically the outer lining. It can be viral, where you often just have a clear fluid, pink, incredibly contagious. Incredibly contagious. You really want to be washing your hands and have everyone washing your hands.
Got it.
You can have a bacterial conjunctivitis,
Yep.
which is where that fluid is not clear but actually purulent.
Yeah.
Starts to get viscous, might start to turn yellow or green.
Yes.
If it's just viral, no role for antibiotics.
How about acyclovir?
Well, that's interesting. That there are uncommonly keratitis, which is a deeper viral infection we have. But in general, that's not something you're going to see.
Oh, okay.
You're not going to see a lot. So your conjunctivitis on the super are going to be self-limiting viral infections, where sometimes people will use antihistamines, just ways to calm down. But really, maybe just some moistening eye drops. No sense pouring a lot of resources into a self-limiting infection.
Okay.
The bacterial, however, you want to be careful there, because an untreated bacterial conjunctivitis can progress, can result in visual impairment, ultimately in blindness.
Scarring. Yes.
So bacterial viral conjunctivitis is not very common. So I'm not gonna. I have a blank page here where I cover treatment and diagnosis of that.
Yeah, you can add some more microbes here though if you'd like.
So let's talk about more microbes. So we've dealt with our basics,
Yep.
our viral, our bacterial
Yep.
conjunctivitis. We've dealt with cataracts,
Yes.
pterygium, but let's add some other infections of the eye. You mentioned chlamydia trachomatis at one point.
I did mention that.
Okay, and that was one of our major, and that's actually caused by a certain bacteria.
Yes.
Chlamydia trachomatis.
Chlamydia are sort of intermediate between bacteria, right?
I think that's true. They're a tiny microbe.
That's right.
I don't know if you've ever been out to a place here in New York where immigrants used to come through, Ellis Island.
Ellis Island.
That was actually,
why they were rejected.
That was actually a very common reason to
that's
reject the
exactly
immigrants.
right.
They would pull down and look for the chlamydial eye infections. And
correct.
the issue is they recurrently get infected.
They made them walk upstairs, remember?
You had to walk upstairs, and they actually had this device with a hook where they would
couldn't
grab
see
the
to walk
eye.
up the stairs. If they stumbled, back on the boat. That's a horrible diagnosis, by the way. I mean, it's a horrible outcome for such an arduous trip that those poor people took to begin with.
And a nice thing there is we have targeted, meaning a lot of organizations have targeted this with azithromycin and mass drug and treated periodically, because you don't become blind with a single chlamydia trachomatis infection. You become blind from
chronic
multiple.
That's right.
Multiple.
So one of our colleagues, part of Parasites Without Borders, Charles Knersch, was a point person with regards to that particular initiative, along with Joe Cook, who used to be in charge of another group of infections, which he moved away from in his later years and became a trachoma biologist, basically, a very influential trachoma biologist. So now we have an amoeba that causes some eye problems. We do. Associated with the use of contact lenses. And in the old days, before they understood what was going on, the contact lens was cleaned with just common tap water. And common tap water, from most situations, contains a paucity of microbes, but nonetheless some. And all you need is one of these. It's an encysted version of this amoeba. And they would wash their lens and thinking it was clean, put it back in their eye. And the amoeba, by the warmth of the human body, would then hatch, so to speak, or exist, becoming a free-moving amoeba. It would isolate along the contact point between the contact lens and the cornea, and it would start to eat the tissue of the cornea. Now, the cornea is only 2 cells thick.
It's amazing, right? How thin that barrier is.
How can you have 2 cells protecting you from the outside world and have it work? Well, because the lacrimal fluid contains lots of different active ingredients, including zymogen, antibodies, and all kinds of other antimicrobials, but not against this organism. So the amoeba would cause a ring of erosion that exactly matched where the contact lens came in contact with the cornea. And as a result, if it became serious enough, the cornea actually had to be replaced with a new cornea, a corneal transplant, which is what a lot of people do when they fill out their wills. They donate their eyes to corneal transplants because there's no rejection of those cells, no matter who it's derived from, they will take. So this Bausch & Lomb company discovered that their contact lenses were being invaded by common tap water. So they invented a solution, of course, it's sterile saline, to use to wash your lenses instead.
And fortunately,
lots of other companies do that too.
Yeah, fortunately, we see much less of that now.
You see much less. That's correct. Not an absence, but a much less.
Yeah, and that's a good example because that would be another of our keratitis. So we're going to see infections that are deeper.
Right.
And because, and I hope we're putting it, because the prevention of blindness and visual impairment are such priorities, like many of our other lectures, you want to know what your other resources are.
Correct.
Because if you don't feel like you're comfortable with what's going on, you want to get an ophthalmologist in sooner rather than later.
Right.
You want to see if there's a way for your patient to be seen by them, because a lot of these situations where if you intervene early, properly, you can preserve the vision. Once you lose the vision, this could be a permanent situation.
That's right.
So I think that as much as we cover on the basics, you always want to realize that if you're not sure what it is, this is an entire subspecialty of medicine.
Of course.
You want to be ready to reach out to your colleagues for support and help. And I think the last thing that we'll talk a little bit about are these little guys that I have sitting here on the table.
Right.
Now, many people who are maybe older than us, maybe our contemporaries, these are quite reading glasses.
Right.
We talked a little bit about sunglasses,
Right.
but the inability to see can be a major problem. And we're not just talking about the ability to see things in the distance, but a lot of times visual correction can be a really important thing that you can bring to the populations that you're taking care of. And that may be very complicated, meaning distance vision, where you really have to check different lens diopter strengths to provide benefit to your patients. Or it may be as simple as bringing a bag of different strength reading glasses, which can often be relatively inexpensive.
That's right.
But allow a person to, again, be able to, let's say they're able to read, or let's say they want to see something that is smaller, a sort of smaller vision. Near vision aids. So sunglasses, reading glasses, these can all add quite a bit to what you can bring to a different population.
No question. We used to have a collection program at the medical school for the glasses that you no longer needed because your eyes had changed beyond those prescriptions. And just buckets full of used glasses would appear in several days, and they would be shipped off to all kinds of places and doing a lot of people a lot of good.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us again. As mentioned, this is a huge area. We've barely touched the surface.
That's right.
But
if you want to hear more, you're going to have to listen to our next episode.
All right. Thank you for joining us.